Hello and welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to explore lots of ways to use stencils, and for that we're going to be using this gorgeous kit that comes with the latest Crafter's Companion magazine. So obviously this is what we're going to be using the most, this 5x5 inch stencil with this beautiful floral pattern. But then we've also got it in the kit, this circle floral die that comes out like this. It's really gorgeous embossing folder, and we're not going to be using that today, but I really love that. This really beautiful springtime stamp set. So you've got the cute little lamb and the little chick, and then you've got all these beautiful florals and some kind of spring sentiments like hello spring, you make me smile, let your dreams blossom, if friends were flowers I'd pick you, and grow your own way. And then also get this paper pack. So this comes in the middle of the magazine. These box kits come with the kit and then a magazine full of ideas, including the ones I'm showing you today, and all the ideas have photos of the finished item and also step-by-step instructions for how to make them. So let me just quickly show you what's in this paper pack. So there's loads of these lovely cut parts. And it's a really nice fun pack. I love some of these kind of more abstract floral pieces. And usually with these packs you get 2 of each sheet, but this is actually a pack full of different sheets. So you get 1 of each, but loads of different options. How beautiful is that? That's really gorgeous. So for my first card, I'm going to create a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card. And I've got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of cardstock, but this is only a 5 by 5 inch stencil. So I'm just going to put it over the bottom part. We're not going to do the top part for now. And I'm popping this in onto my sticky mat. So this is my sticky mat as for my stamp wheel, but Altenew do sell these separately as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some Lunar paste. So I've got Fake Plant and Clear Skies. And I grab a palette knife and I'm just going to add a little bit of this through my stencil. I'm just kind of adding a couple of like loose stripes across it. And then I've just quickly rinsed that colour off of my palette knife. I'm going to go in with some Blue Skies for the other bit. And I kind of want them to blend together a bit, which is why I've not kind of cleaned the green off. And let's lift off the stencil. So then we've got this really lovely panel. And I'm just going to make sure I clean these really quickly so it doesn't dry on any of my equipment. Okay, so now that this is dried, and look at that gorgeous shine to it, then I'm going to take my Watercolor gold pen. This is the one that you'll often see me using for like colouring wax seals and stuff. And I'm just going to colour in the centres of the flowers. I just think it adds a nice little contrast. So then I had originally intended this for a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, but I've actually decided to do something completely different with it. I often have an idea in my head and then change my mind halfway through making a card. And so instead I'm going to make a diamond pop-up card. So let's make the card base for my card. And in order to do that, I've got a 5 inch by 10 inch piece of this blue cardstock. And I'm going to put it in at 2.5 inches and score it. Then I'm going to put it in at 5 inches and score it. And then I'm going to move it to 7.5 inches. And I'm just going to put a little score mark on either side. So you can see I've just got a little kind of notch. And then I'm going to do the same at the top. So So 2.5 inches, I'm doing it across the top. You might have noticed that my cardstock's a bit bent. I'm running out of this colour of cardstock, and so I'm using it in the best way that I can, basically. I know that I'm going to cut off this corner, and that's the bent bit. So by carefully cutting your cardstock, I feel like you can use even stuff that's not in the best condition anymore. So I'm going to just cut from those 2 marks that we made. I'm going to cut that corner off, and I'm going to do the same the other side. So I'm just lining up this middle at the top and the one down the side along the cutting line, and then I can cut that corner off as well. And then I'm going to score from this corner here to this score line here, and then again in the opposite direction. So from this mark here to this score line there. Now I'm going to measure this line here, because this is going to be a diamond for the diamond pop-up. So this will tell me the size of square I need to fill that diamond pop-up. And the square is 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to fold along all these score lines, and then I'm just going to push these ones backwards. I'm going to fold that forwards so that we get this shape here. And then I'm going to cut a panel to fit on here out of this. So then I'm going to use this Hello Spring sentiment from the stamp set, and I'm just going to heat emboss that in gold embossing powder onto this blue cardstock. And I want to cut it in a diamond, so that's why I've left some room around it. So then we've got this to go on here, and then I've come up with a bit of a cheats way to add some of this to this bottom as well, because we've only got the spare bits of this left and I don't want to create another whole panel. So what I've done is the bottom of here measures 2.5 by 5 inches, so I've cut this piece, which is 4 7/8 by 2 3/8 inches, so that's just 1/8 of an inch smaller than this panel. And then I've cut these pieces up so that I can kind of just make a patchwork on here of pieces, and it will look pretty without having to create another panel. So I'm going to glue these on. So it's a really nice way of using up those scraps and not wasting any of this panel. And then I don't need to worry about that bit there because that's going to go over the top. So the only piece that's not going to get used is this little square here. So then let's add that onto my card. And then I'm going to glue under this triangle here. And I'm going to just glue that down. You can see how pretty that looks there now. It's kind of almost like a tiled effect. And then I've got my 3¼ inch square panel, and I'm going to glue that to a piece of gold cardstock that's 1/8 of an inch bigger. So that one is 3 3/8 inches. And then I've got my Hello Spring, and I cut out a piece of gold cardstock with the die that's one size bigger, so it's about 1/4 of an inch bigger. And then I'm going to glue this to my card now. And then I'm going to pop some foam pads behind that. So then that's our first card done, and I just love the shine on that Lunar paste. So pretty. So for my next card, I'm going to use a couple of different types of watercolours. So for the first part, I'm going to create a watercolour wash with these watercolours, which is my Altenew watercolour palette. And so I'm just going to grab a bit of blue, water it down quite a lot because I just want a nice light wash. I'm going to add the blue to the top, and then I'll grab some of this green, and then I'll just set this aside to dry for a little while. So then now that this is dry, I'm going to pop my stencil onto here, and I'm just going to draw around some of these flowers. You only need to kind of loosely draw around, you just need the shape because we're going to watercolour them. And I'm going to move this across. So then I'm going to grab an acrylic block, but you could grab a paint palette or anything else, it's just to mix the paints on. And I've got these watercolour tubes of paint. So I've got this permanent yellow deep, they're all alternate ones. I've got this phthalo blue, and then I've got Toluidine red. And then I'm going to spritz on a little bit of water to use with them as well. And I'm just going to colour in these flowers. But when I'm painting the petals, I'm going to go from the middle and kind of paint the shape of the petals like that, because I don't want the stencil lines on there, I want to paint over the stencil lines. And then I'm going to mix some of the blue and the yellow to make a green. Then I've just heat embossed this Grow Your Own Way in black embossing powder to finish off the card. I think that's a really cute card, and it's quite fun to watercolour in that really naive way using the stencil as a guide if you're new to watercolouring or you just want to give it a try. So then for this next card, I want quite a subtle background. So I've got my card blank, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I've got this blush ink from Alternate, and I'm going to just add that through my stencil. And I'm purposefully using one of these mini blending brushes from Alternate because I want to be quite purposeful about my blending, and you'll see that when we get to the bottom. So now that we're getting towards the bottom, I'm making sure that I'm only doing the full flowers. I'm not doing any of these partial flowers. And that's so that I can then move the stencil and continue on the pattern. So then I'm going to add this bit here. And I'm going to move this and just add this one in this corner. So then we've got a nice all over pattern, even though our stencil's not actually big enough to do that. So then I've got these pieces. So I've stamped and coloured this. This is that really lovely stamp from the pack. And the detail bit that comes forward, so this is kind of the bit that's the most forwards in the picture, I've kind of like coloured on a separate piece, and I'm just going to add that on foam pads above there, so I've got a kind of 2-layer image. So then I've cut a piece of blue cardstock. It's 2.5 by 4 3/4 inches to go under that. And then I'm going to use this You Make Me Smile. And I'm going to heat emboss that onto a scrap of this blue cardstock. And I'm going to heat emboss that in white. So then I'm going to glue the floral piece onto the blue piece. And I can glue this onto my card. Now I'm just going to add a foam pad behind this end of my sentiment, and a little bit of blue behind this end. And then I can add that onto here. And then there we've got another fun card. So then for this next card, I've got these pieces of cardstock, these nice bright colours, and they all measure 2 3/4 by 5.5 inches. And I'm going to cut them from corner to corner like that. So then I've got a 5.5 inch square of white cardstock and I'm going to glue them onto there. And I'm going to cut a circle from this, so I'm more worried about having nice tight lines between the colours rather than the edges being, like these edges being straight or anything. So I want to make sure that they're butted right up against each other. And then I'm going to cut a 5-inch circle from that. But first I'm going to do some stenciling on it. So I'm going to make sure I go in really well with my embossing body because I don't want any glue to have crept between those gaps. And then I'm going to pop my stencil in the middle. Then I'm going to add a little bit of embossing ink refill onto that acrylic block. And then I'm going to add some of that to my smoothie tool. And then I'm just going to add it onto here. I'm not too worried about it going over the edges of the stencil because when we die cut it with our circle, then we'll be cutting that off anyway. And then I'm going to use my opaque bright white Superfine embossing powder and just cover that. So I know that looks a bit of a hot mess at the moment with all this around the outside, but once we cut the circle out of that, I think it's going to look really pretty. So then I've got my circle, and that's going to make my card blank with the other circle that's the same size. And then I've cut this using the die that's in the set, and then I'm going to lay that on there, and I'm going to use that as a guide to stamp through. So I'm kind of going to temporarily tape it on so it doesn't move while I'm stamping. And I heat emboss this so I get a nice bold look. Then I'm going to bring in my black embossing powder. So then I've got some Stampin' Up markers, and these are just water-based markers, and I'm just going to go through and colour this die cut. And then how pretty does that look now it's coloured? So I'm going to make up my card blank. So to do that, I'm going to pop this in here. I'm going to cut 1/2 inch off one side, and I'm going to turn that around, and I put that in at 4 inches, and I'm going to make sure that this line here is nice and straight on this side, because that means that I'll be scoring a line that's parallel to that. And this line's going to stop my card from rocking and rolling. So I'm going to add some glue above that score line. And then I'm going to add on this. Then I'm going to glue this onto my sentiment. And then I'm going to add some foam pads onto the back. And so then there we've got our really pretty bright card. And because we've chopped that bit off at the back, it stands up really nicely without rocking or rolling. So then for my final card, I've got a 5x5 inch piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to go in with a black fine liner pen and just draw all around these flowers. So then I've coloured that with my Karin markers. I'm going to use this Let Your Dream Blossom stamp, and I'm going to heat emboss that in white. So then I've cut that out with a square die, and I've cut a gold piece with the die one size bigger, and I've also cut 2 frames. So these are made using layering dies. So I've used a 5-inch one to be the same size as my card front, and then the inside one of this is about 4¼ inches, and the inside one of this is about 4½ inches. So then I'm going to layer these onto my card front. So I've got a 5-inch square card, and I'll glue this on top. Then I'm going to glue my frame together. And then I'm going to glue my sentiment on. So then I'm going to grab some foam strips and add them behind my frame. Obviously you can use foam tape for this, but I don't have any in my stash at the moment, so I'm just using what I've got on hand. I'm going to add that to my card. And then I'm going to add some foam pads behind my sentiment. And then I love how pretty that's turned out. So then there are all 5 of today's cards showing different ways that you can use your stencils. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Please do let me know in the comments below which is your favourite. I love to hear which ones you like the most. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you clicked like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.